Hey there! In today's video we're going to explore the Hanham variation of the Philidor, and we're going to do it by analyzing a game between Vidit Gujrati and Sam Shankland. This game was played yesterday in the World Cup. It was the third round of the World Cup in the tie breaks in a very tense situation. Imagine Sam Shankland being trailing by 1 point after losing dramatically with the white pieces. He was winning, but he blundered and ended up losing, and now having to win on demand against Vidit with the black pieces. Yeah, the situation seems really difficult for him. Here's where the Philidor comes into the picture, and you may argue, but the Philidor, why didn't he play the Sicilian? Okay, he couldn't play the Sicilian. I'll show you why. Yeah, the Philidor is not the sort of defense that you could expect for a must-winning situation. But the reality is that playing the Hanham variation of the Philidor guarantees a tense battle. And this is ideal if you are playing for a win. Let's see how this dramatic game unfolded. Let's get into it. Vidit played 1d4 that came as a surprise, as he was playing e4 in all his previous white games. Okay, but d4 might be a way to avoid the Sicilian, or he might be interested in getting into Shankland's normal repertoire against d4, the Slav, the semi-Slav, the King's Indian, but Sam Shankland played d6. Well, a very fashionable way to meet 1d4, and he's inviting his opponent to play e4, and yeah, Vidit accepted, as he is an e4 player usually. Knight f6, knight c3, and here there are two ways to enter into the Philidor. The most reliable is e5, but the problem here is that you're inviting your opponent into an ending. D takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes d8, king takes d8, and while this ending has a reputation of being good for black, playing for a win in this kind of position against Vidit might be really tough. So Shankland preferred to play knight bd7, preparing e5 without allowing the trade of queens. Knight f3 was played, and the real problem would have been f4. And yeah, that was the risky aspect, as after e5, knight f3, e takes d4, queen takes d4, preparing bishop d2 or bishop e3, and long castle is known to be better for white. But I mean, it is better for white, but it's complicated, and probably Vidit wasn't too sure about the theory here. So he preferred to keep the game stable after knight f3, e5, and again he chose the most principal variation, bishop c4, rather than playing g4 or rook g1 intending g4, that are the most aggressive moves here. So after bishop c4, bishop e7, castle, castle, and a4. Yeah, this is a normal move. Usually white plays rook e1, but a4 is directed against c6 and b5. I mean, if black plays c6 and b5, then we're getting a nice position as black. So a4 gains some space and restricts black's mobility in the queen side. So now the game continues with c6, rook e1, and transposes to the normal main line. And here it's curious to compare this line to the so-called exchange variation of the Philidor, where black trades the pawn on d4 early as move 3, to go and attack the e pawn by placing a rook on the e file, bishop f8, g6, bishop g7, and try to destroy white's center in this way, but gives white a lot of choices. Very often white can even castle in the queen side. And well, if you're interested in this variation, I highly recommend you to give it a look. I have a video devoted to it. So let's go back to this position where Sam Shankland prefers to keep the central tension and yeah, not to trade. He will try to make all the possible useful moves to improve his situation before trading. And from white's perspective, yeah, they are going to do something similar, not advancing and not trading on e5, as those are concessions. So keeping the tension with this kind of useful move is a standard for white. c6 and rook e1. Here there are several ways to play, but h6 is the most fashionable way to continue. played even by Magnus Carlsen. He defeated Gukesh recently by playing h6. And yeah, this is becoming really trendy. So the game continues with h3. This one controls e4 to enable bishop e3. It is also possible to play a5 or even to play b3 and bring the bishop to b2 or to a3. But anyways, there are always interesting chances for both sides. So h3 is the most principal, rook e8, bishop e3, and bishop f8. So now black is ready to attack e4, a5, and this one wins some space in the queen side and probably prepares d5 as knight b6 won't be available any longer. So now e takes d4, bishop takes d4, and queen c7. Yeah, now the idea is to play knight e5 to bring black's pieces into the game. Bishop f1. Yeah, it's curious to see that this move took 4 minutes for Vidit. This is too long a thought for a rapid game. The problem is not the quality of the move, because the move is good. After knight e5, knight h2. Yeah, he wants to play f4. He doesn't want to trade pieces. And everything seems to be really nice. But Sam Shankland continues with g5. And he's already 6 minutes ahead, almost 6 minutes ahead in the clock. And this one is devoted to stop f4 and to play some sort of extended fianchetto, bishop g7. And I mean, at some moment, even play g4, queen d2, bishop e6. Now, yeah, this knight is something, at least something to play for. This knight is really well placed. And Vidit plays f4 for this precise reason. He wants to get rid of the knight, or at least to weaken black's king side. G takes f4, queen takes f4, and bishop g7. Yeah, now black's king seems a little bit weakened, but not that much, as white's pieces are still far from the king side. Vidit played queen f2. He attacks a7 and a6. Shankland decided to move the pawn, knight a4, and well, this move is not my favorite in this position. I think that knight f3 was a better one, trying to get rid of the e5 knight. Knight fd7 can be a continuation, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and now knight e2, trying to bring the knight to f4 and h5, and yeah, also clearing the third rank for the rook to create a very nice rook lift against our king. Yeah, knight a4 seems normal, but yeah, what is the knight going to do on b6? Nothing, I guess. Queen e7, bringing the queen to the king side, knight b6, rook a d8, rook a d1, and well, white's position is really solid, but black's position is not bad at all. After knight d7, finally he got a decent position, and the plan might be to play king h7 and rook d8 and try to create some threats along the g file. So knight takes d7, rook takes d7, and yeah, black's position is okay because of the knight as usual, and yeah, this bishop is also very strong. So yeah, I think Shankland has done a very nice job. If I were playing as white, I would try to get rid of the knight on e5 as soon as possible because it's a really strong piece. But okay, he played rook e3, trying to play rook e3, creating some pressure against our king. And Sam Shankland came up with king h7, rook e3, rook g8. And yeah, he's ready to fight for the g file. So everything seems to be under control. King h1. Yeah, when we think about positional chess, one of the most important things we can do is to improve our worst piece. And while all black's pieces seem to be okay, the rook on d7 seems to be a bit disconnected from the king side. So rook d8 was played, and this is a really nice move, trying to replace the rook from the g file. So bishop e2, bishop g7, and knight f1. Yeah, the knight is coming to f5. That is the weakest square in black's camp. And Shankland played rook g6, a very nice move. Rook takes d6 cost him more than 1 minute, And yeah, this is almost 2 minutes. He's got 2 minutes 45 seconds, and after this one, 108, the situation starts to be really difficult for him, not because of his position, not because of the pawn islands, but because of the clock. So knight h2, rook f8, queen g3, yeah, he's playing instantly, and h5. I guess h5 was directed against knight g4, and he's trying to play h4 as well, so creating some sort of threat, making Vidit's life difficult with such a little time on his clock. So knight f3, knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, yeah, now 40 seconds only, h4, and here we face a very interesting situation where he plays queen f2 almost automatically. I was considering queen h2 as a way to keep d6 attacked, but I understand that he may feel in danger because of some sort of back rank issue and with no time to analyze. But this one was, yeah, a normal move. I thought that capturing or even playing rook d8 was a way to continue. Bishop takes h8, king takes h8, queen f4, king g7, and well, the idea is to trade queens with something like queen f6, and if they trade queens, of course, king takes f6 and king e5, but e5, d5, and this kind of position is still unbalanced. So yeah, Shankland can still play for a win, even when for the engine this is equal, but h4, queen f2 wasn't a bad move either. But after bishop e5, c3 was a mistake. And here it was really interesting to play bishop g3, as white's queen should stay close to defend the bishop on f3. I mean, queen d2 is answered by bishop takes h3, and yeah, as the bishop is defended by the pawn. And queen e2 can be answered with queen g5, I guess, or even queen f7. Yeah, queen f7 seems really nice. Again, threatening bishop takes h3, bishop c4, bishop b3. This bishop is at the same time defending the d6 pawn, the h4 pawn, and restricting white's king. So, I mean, this would have been really nice, but Shankland didn't have time, so he played queen d5, a normal move, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, and now finally queen d2. Yeah, this one is a bad move. It was better to keep the tension somehow. Queen c5, even attacking the rook, attacking the pawn. This one keeps the equality, but queen d2 is not losing, but compromises the whole thing. But take into account that this move came only with 28 seconds, so yeah, he's in a severe time pressure. After queen takes d2, rook takes d2, Shankland played bishop takes h3. He's trying to get into a better ending, but remember that rook endings are really difficult to win. And g takes h3, rook takes f3, and rook d7, king h6, trying to bring the king to g5 and f4 at some moment, and rook takes b7. This is a blunder. Finally, having such a little time took its toll, as king g2, rook g3, king h2, and white's position might be worse, but it is really difficult to win this kind of position. Rook takes b7, rook takes e4, and rook b6. The ending is drawish. But now after rook takes b7, rook takes h3, king g2, and rook d3, black's position is winning. He is preparing to push his pawns, his passive pawns, and bring his king to f4, and there is very little he can do to survive here. So rook b6, g5, rook takes a6, g4, rook takes e6, king g5, and even when white is a pawn up, these pawns, the king, white's exposed king, yeah, this is too much. So rook c8, h3, king f2, rook d2, yeah, with the trick of king g3, rook g2 checkmate. So the game continues with king e3, rook takes b2, and h2 is coming. So, well, black's position is absolutely winning. h2, rook takes e5, and he lost some time. Yeah, I guess king h4, king g3, queening, yeah, and stopping the pawns with rook a2, rook takes a5. It is interesting to mention that after the next game that ended up in a draw, Shankland came back to the Philidor in the last game of the match, and he did it again. He won the game again with the Philidor. And of course, I'm not going to analyze this game. I don't want to make this video too long. I will share the link to the game in the comments below, so you can give it a look. It was a really nice game as well. And well, the thing with the Philidor is a really interesting defense. You can try it once in a while. I mean, the French defense is my favorite, but even as a teenager, I started to play the Philidor once in a while. Combining the Philidor and the French and later the Sicilian helped me to confuse my opponents, and I guess to confuse myself as well. So thank you very much for your attention. See you next time. Goodbye.